If you're working within the Defense Industrial Base or DIB, you're all too familiar with the acronym CUI. Of course, you also likely know that it stands for Controlled Unclassified Information, especially if you watched all of the other videos that we've created where I explain what CUI is in detail. Even after watching those other videos though, you're likely still a little bit confused, and that's okay. You see, CUI seems like a simple concept, but it's a lot more complicated. It doesn't help that there are two different types of CUI markings either. Hi everyone, I'm Matt from eTactics, and today I'm going to explain how and when to use traditional CUI marking. Before we get started though, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the button below. While you're down there, hit that alert bell icon next to it as well, so when we post new helpful content, you get notified. As I alluded to at the beginning of this video, there are two types of CUI markings, traditional and non-traditional. For the scope of this video, we'll only care about traditional marking. Marking is the first step in the proper handling of CUI because it alerts holders to protect the information. To help describe the traditional way of applying CUI markings, I need to bring up an image from the U.S. National Archives. The Designation Indicator must identify who originated the CUI. It's also mandatory. It's a best practice to include the name and contact information for the point of contact. The indicator can take various forms, including a letterhead, example on the left, a signature block, example on the left, a control byline, example on the right. Another mandatory piece of the traditional CUI marking puzzle is the CUI Banner Marking. It appears at the top of the document and alerts the recipients that the document contains CUI. Banners must also appear in bold, capitalized, and centered when possible. It's important to also mention that you need to keep banner marking separate from any administrative marking. If you're marking a document with more than one page, the banner marking will be the same for the entire document. If you decide to use an optional footer, it must also be identical to the banner marking. Banner markings may include up to 3 elements, each separated by 2 forward slashes. Third mandatory part of this whole thing is the CUI control marking. It consists of either the word controlled in all caps or the acronym CUI in all caps at the top of the page. CUI Basic requires only the control marking. Although this next part is only mandatory for CUI specified, it's important to mention category marking. These clarify what type of CUI is in a document. CUI category markings are found within the CUI registry and preceded by SP-. When including more than one category or subcategory in a banner marking, separate them with a single forward slash. For example, this series of letters and slashes indicates 2 types of CUI, basic including emergency management and water assessment. This next one indicates 1 type of CUI specified, general privacy information. A document with both category markings should list all specified markings before all basic markings. If there are more than one for either CUI specified or CUI basic, the category markings should be alphabetized. For example, this code indicates 2 types of CUI specified, general privacy information and health information, and 1 type of CUI basic, death records. Let's not forget about limited dissemination controls or LDC marking. These place limits on sharing CUI. When marked, LDCs are the last component in the banner. You'll need to alphabetize LDCs when including more than one and separate them by a single forward slash. Time for another example. This code indicates CUI specified export controlled with a limited dissemination control, no foreign dissemination only allowed for US citizens. After all of that, now let's touch on limited dissemination controls themselves. LDCs help control secondary sharing, decontrol, and release without the need to get secondary approval or authorization from the controlling DoD office. I'll list all the LDCs for you now, but they require their own separate video entirely. No foreigner NF, Fed only, FedCon, NoCon, DL only, Rel to USA, Display only, Attorney-Client, Attorney-WP, and deliberative. The next thing you need to know about traditional markings is portion marking. Portion marking is optional but recommended because it indicates which parts of a document are CUI. Portions include subjects, titles, paragraphs and subparagraphs, bullet points and sub-bullet points, headings, pictures, graphs, charts, maps, reference lists, etc. Portion markings appear in parentheses before each paragraph of the document. A parentheses U means that the paragraph contains uncontrolled, unclassified information. A parentheses CUI means the paragraph contains controlled, unclassified information. You can also indicate the categories within the paragraph and any LDCs that apply. Separate these markings in the same way as discussed in the banner. For example, this designation indicates CUI specified export control, with a limited dissemination control no foreign, limiting dissemination to U.S. citizens only. Paragraphs marked with parentheses CUI mean they contain basic information. If CUI exists in classified documents, its markings will appear in that section where it exists. It's important to point out that in this instance, additional markings won't exist in the header or footer of the document. Finally, I need to mention supplemental administrative markings. You should mark all documents containing CUI, even those in draft form. Administrative markings can identify the document is a draft, but you cannot incorporate administrative markings into the banner. They should be separate from the CUI marking altogether. Whew! I hope you're still with me, and I know what you're thinking. I need to know all of this information for only one type of CUI marking? Yes, the reality is you need to, especially if you're planning on continuing to try to win bids on DoD contracts, thanks to everyone within the DIB's new favorite 4-letter acronym, CMMC. If you'd like to learn more about how to mark CUI, reach out to eTactics. And you already made it this far into the video, so you might as well like it, share it, and comment below. What are you waiting for? Subscribe to our YouTube channel.